Welcome to the House of Brand, where we help unleash the true potential of your brand. If you're a business owner, leader, or C-suite executive and you're ready to scale your business to new heights, you're in the right place. I'm Torey, your guide in turning your brand into a strategic advantage for your company. In each episode, we get straight to the heart of what it takes to build a brand that drives growth, that shapes culture, and fuels your marketing efforts. So let's get started.
Have you seen the documentary in HBO Max called Mother God? Or it's like the story behind Mother God.
No.
So it was this woman who, she kept getting married to these guys and they would be Father God. And then she would like fall out of love with them, but would just keep adding more and more Father Gods to her fold. And these people were like coming from all over the United States. They would like Facebook Live this, and they were making
these people know who she is. Like when they're traveling there, they know who she is. Like they're trying to find her.
Yeah. And they were, they were sending a bunch of money, and she essentially was like, she killed herself via alcoholism. Like she was drinking enough to make like Duff McKagan turn red or something. And the story goes over for like 3 or 4 years when it got really bad. But like at one point they thought, she needs to go to the Hawaiian Islands for some healing. And then she was saying she was the reincarnation of Pele, and then she was God, and they kicked her out of there. And long story short, the cops finally found her, blue from this like silver extract that she was drinking, wrapped up like a mummy. It's a great documentary.
Wait a minute, who wrapped? Actually, now I got to watch. Who wrapped her up?
Followers.
You know what, though? The tie-in that we have here is one thing that she was at the late stages here. She was on brand.
She was on brand.
She had people. She had an audience. She had people coming to look for her.
100%.
She was on brand.
Yeah.
That's a good transition. That's a really good transition. Hey, everybody. Today we've got Chris Collier. Chris, welcome. Happy to have you. Chris is a vice president of marketing at EHS Insights. Chris and I have crossed paths here and there in the last few months, but that was after we kind of connected at an event in our local community here, where we realized that there was a lot of alignment and things that we had gone through, and we liked talking about marketing. And so it's been great to get to know you in the last few months, actually.
We just like each other.
Yeah, that makes it easier, doesn't it?
It does make it easier.
Yeah. I wouldn't say that there are a lot of people in marketing I don't like, but there's a few.
There's a few.
That I would just not have on the podcast.
Same.
Tell us about you. I think your professional path, how you ended up where you are, and give people background on what makes you in the marketing world.
So I'm kind of I'm your non-traditional. I mean, I actually do have a marketing degree. I first was computer science, and then I realized this is a lot of math, and I wasn't good at math at that time. Teaser, anybody going into marketing, it's a lot of math. But went to Washington State University. I got my degree in marketing, my minor in sociology, and the main part was I wanted to follow my father because he's got a business degree, and he never actually did anything with it. So I was like, I want to be the first one in our family that gets a business degree and goes on and does something with it. So first job was marketing research, which, I can, relate to a lot of my business development reps and my sales development reps, because you're on the phone all the time trying to gain insight. And it gave me a ton of good skills, from being able to interview people, to ask the right questions, find the right answers to my questions. Fast forward, essentially I spent the last 14 years as the incumbent hire for a local online safety training company, Vivid Learning Systems, and grew from the first hire to the last hire when they went through an exit, which was my introduction into private equity. And we were bought by the Health and Safety Institute.
Okay.
Spent about 18 months after I was recruited or poached from an interim CMO into the cybersecurity realm. And that really was my first test as a marketing leader, and then also really having to be dumped in the deep end without anybody to save me. There was no lifeline. There was no ring. I had to do everything myself. And luckily, as a leader, I like to be able to do everything else, or do everything that the team requires. I'm not going to ask my team to do anything that I don't want to do or I don't know how to do. From there, after I spent about 18 months, was recruited back into the EHS industry to a company called EHS Insights, where I'm currently at. And I would say we're right now a mid-market company. We're not a small company comparatively to a lot of, local companies.
Yeah, what I like about this story, and I think what's interesting, because in this podcast, we like to talk about these mid-market small businesses, and what path are you going through to try and reach that, which everyone's trying to scale, right? How far you're trying to scale is maybe up to investors or founders or whoever that is, but they've all got a why or a reason or a number, I'm sure, as they're scaling. But it's really intriguing to me that there's these businesses out there that exist in the B2B space, especially, that are so niche and so tightly held. Like the customer base is so niche, you can't possibly know all of them. But through the course of marketing and talking to people like you and others, I always hear about these niche markets where I'm like, and then you hear the size of it and you're like, that's huge. It's a huge niche market. Yep. But what is the market? What is the space that you're in? What is EHS in? And then you're prior to that. What is the market? What exactly is it?
I mean, environmental health and safety is actually, really, it's one of the oldest markets too. One of the oldest industries in the United States of America. When OSHA was founded. But essentially, in our neck of those woods, we're a platform. We're a safety and sustainability platform. And so what we do is we help safety professionals for each one of their companies keep track of all the things that they need to do to be compliant, all the regulatory issues they've got. It could be, safety data sheets to severe injury and fatality monitoring and avoiding those types of things. It's part of the reason why I've actually come back to the industry, because I wholeheartedly believe for myself, I didn't want to work for a company that just sold another product. Mm-hmm. I needed to work for something or promote something that actually helped people come home to their friends and family at the end of the day, enriched their lives. The big kind of push for the whole industry is building a safety culture. Mm-hmm. Everybody's talking about culture these days. And so, I can't remember the exact numbers, but I want to say in the next, I think by 2030, it's supposed to be in the mid 20 billions, like $25 billion for the industry.
Huge market.
It's a huge market. And it goes everything from safety vests, safety shoes, gloves, maybe other.
So what do you mean when you say that? So you guys are a software platform, mm-hmm. essentially. So you're saying that, it's all the way from knowing what size people wear to what, but you guys you're not in the middle of ordering these products.
No. That would be that's basically like a sub-segment of the whole EHS industry, right? You've got everything from the physical objects, maybe even monitoring of, air, water, things of that nature. Some of those are starting to report back into some of our platforms. But from our realm, and there's been some people who say there's a ton of software platforms in the industry. Mm-hmm. In my opinion, it's been consolidated so much that training is becoming a commodity in my realm, and that used to be a big part of it. But really, we're starting to see, kind of like with cybersecurity, a lot of consolidation, a lot of fighting for market share. There's still a lot of organic market share to grab, but right now we're also I want to steal all of my competitors' customers.
Well, you said I wanted to work for, I'm paraphrasing, but I wanted to work for a company that I thought was making a difference, whether that's in safety or whatever that might be. What do you think, when you think of EHS, what are some ways, if we can bring this back to brand just a little bit, what are some of the ways you think that you guys just do it better? Whether that is the platform itself. I think there's some things I recognize working with you as a client, that the UI was better. Those are things that are obvious when you start looking at the product. But what are some of the things maybe that you guys talk about, or some things that are important to you guys as a company that you think make the brand stand out maybe a little bit more as people identify you and as a solution?
It's a great question, Torey. Last summer, just when you get to our level, a lot of people don't understand this. Like when you get an executive level and a new CEO comes in, like typically they clean house. So I had about 4 months of fun employment last year. Totally normal for at my stage in my career. And I told myself, I'm like, okay, no matter where I go, I really want to go somewhere that the product is solid. It almost sells itself. Of course, I believe in it. Mm-hmm. When recruitment started to come down the path for this company, and I started to really read about him and see everything, I was telling my wife, I have to work for this company. I absolutely have to work for this company. And it became even more apparent after I had my first interview with my boss, the CEO, Gary McDonald. Gary, along with Eric Stevens, our CTO, and a few others, have grown that company starting in 2009 to current days from the ground up. And the reason why I believe that our product is the best is we don't develop our own training. We have a training component. We outsource it. We've got great partners that give us that because it's really become a commodity.
Okay.
But the code set, the product itself, the way it's designed, the way that it can be scaled up or down for any industry or any customer, that's why I believe that we are the best. It works. It's simple. It's beautiful.
Great. This is actually a perfect lesson in positioning, I think. When a company decides, is our differentiator going to be the actual content that we're going to deliver? Or is that common enough out there in the world that our biggest difference is going to be how we deliver that and make sure we deliver it easily in a way that a client can, is that what you're saying? That you guys decided it's the delivery of this product that's the most important part of it?
I think, and that'd actually be a good follow-up question for myself to go to ask my boss, but I believe that. I believe, one, the code was written correctly from the ground up. Yeah. And so as they wanted to scale, it wasn't a matter of like, oh my gosh, we've got 7 different code sets and we've got to figure out how they're going to work. Like there's, everything was working and they can just bolt things on as they need it. But I think they actually had the foresight to know, like, here's the future and here's what's going to save future us from multiple headaches.
I think it's interesting when you were talking about how much passion you had in the conversations between you and your wife, that I knew I had to work here. I always think that translates to customers who say, I want to hire you. I always think there's a tie there, that if you have people that are working for an organization that, and I believe this is all a part of brand.
Yeah.
That the employees that want to work there are then living the brand and then delivering it out to the customer to say, hey, this is why you should choose us and we believe in it. That your chance of being successful to that perfect ideal client for you is so much higher than if you weren't that invested.
I couldn't agree more. Every year, our whole company is spread out all over the world. We've got a coworker in Australia. We've got some in EMEA. And then all over the United States. But every year we have a giant corporate retreat for about 40% of it. We've got to do some team building type stuff. But really it's break bread, get to know everybody, and they pay for spouses to come too, or a partner. And my first one was in February. I wholeheartedly, we do not have a bad apple in the bunch. And that includes spouses, like fantastic coworkers, fantastic partners for the coworkers. And it just makes for, and I think it's the fact that we've been really, really stringent with how we hire. We want somebody who's going to wholeheartedly believe in this and want to make it better and push it as far as we can so that we provide a good, because the product is the platform, but the service is providing that customer support, that implementation after we've sold it to the customer.
This is really interesting. One of the things I think that separates our brand process and some of the things that we believe in that brand process is the idea that you can define your promise and you can define your reasons to believe in your product and what our difference is. But you have to decide what that employee value set looks like that's going to get you there. Like you have to know, like we know we want this type of person to help us get here. And that's sometimes difficult. Like it's difficult, number one, to define. I think the hardest part though is actually living it, and you can watch it in hiring process. Like, and I'd love to know more about yours. I imagine it wasn't very fast, the hiring process. Maybe it was, but what was it different than other hiring processes you've been through?
Mine was different because I was friends with I still am friends, but the former VP of sales, we had worked together before.
Okay.
And then I also have, I call her my work sister, shout out to Brooke Henderson. She and I actually worked at 4 companies together. And so she was like, would you be interested in coming back to the EHS industry? They knew they needed a marketing leader quickly. And so I was pushed through pretty quickly, but I've been on the other end of like hiring our new executive vice president of sales. And I've been on several other interview panels, and we kind of actually go against the grain from a lot of the other interview processes that I went through last summer. Like I applied to 160 positions. I went through 60 interviews, 4 or 5 final rounds. Some of them were like, I need a blood sample and I need you to do homework and all this other stuff. And I'm like, I'm too old for this. I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
But with this one, it was basically, they look at skill set and really fit. The philosophy is kind of the same for the rest of the companies it is for me. I want the right attitude. I can teach skills.
Yeah.
But I want the right aptitude and the right, I want them to be there and be willing to learn, be willing to work hard, which, yeah.
So your hiring process had a high velocity, which is a word you taught me today. So Chris and I had lunch right before this. He used the word velocity, which I had to stop him and say, back up to him, what the hell you're talking about. Like, I don't know what that term was. You were referring to the fact that in part of marketing, what you can do is increase the sales velocity, where maybe you're not increasing lead generation or increasing how many, but you're increasing the velocity, reducing time in the sale process.
Right.
So you had high velocity in your hiring process.
I had high velocity in my sales process.
Yeah. I'm sure they're happy about it. So Chris, I know when we talk about brand and House of Brand, we're pretty specific that we don't like to talk about the biggest brands out there, that we like to talk about this mid-market and give examples in mid-market and small business that will resonate with people that are watching. I wonder with you guys in EHS, tell us what it's like in a B2B company that's in this software space, B2B software, even though you guys might have a bigger offering than just the software, but really that's where you guys are at. What does brand like mean to you, and what does it look like in that setting? And what might surprise some people maybe about brand, either that it's not that much different or that it's somewhat similar to some of those big brands that we don't often talk about on this podcast.
I mean, to play off of what you and I were discussing at lunch, brand is that messaging consistency in all aspects of whatever you're doing. We were talking about how when I came on board at EHS Insight, we didn't have a pipeline problem. We didn't have a lead generation problem. I inherited probably one of the most amazing marketing teams, in my opinion, which has made my life way too easy. Shout out to my team.
Another shout out, because I think I told you at lunch that among the most pleasant of our clients, whenever we have a discussion, it can be challenging, and you guys can ask things and say, hey, we need to do better, but always in a way that is very much a team effort. Like, let's get this done and shout out to them. They're great.
Yeah, my team's fantastic. But the conclusion I came to is we have a brand messaging issue, and marketing was saying something, sales was saying something totally different. Product and marketing, I felt were actually a little more aligned. Okay. And so I wanted to get us all on the same page, starting from, asking our fearless leader, the CEO, like, what does our brand mean? Let's start from the top down and roll down. We worked, we reverse engineered some things to kind of figure some things out, but essentially I came up with a 29-page brand document that I actually shared with you.
Yeah. As a validation, because I was like, am I on the right mark? And that's where we got started.
So Chris, when you had that conversation with your CEO, when you came to him, just wondering, was there anything maybe that you learned from that I don't know if it surprised you, but you took away from that and said, we just got to make sure that whether we integrate it or not, I don't know, but we need to get that feeling of whatever that conversation was like.
Yeah, and I mean, so after my first initial conversations with them after I started, I believe that a CEO should be in charge of pushing the product and go to market. And the reason why he brought me in is our, Mohammed Bozo, who's my senior RevOps and growth manager. He was actually the marketing manager, and he was like, you know what? I think I've taken as far as I can, and I need somebody who's got some senior leadership to really take us to the next level. And so he'd been underneath Gary, and Gary was like, well, yeah, let's go to the outside. And so talking with him, it was very apparent that this man who's founded the company from the ground up, and he's done everything from sales to marketing to RevOps to everything. He is extremely knowledgeable about his product, and he's extremely passionate. And I just kept telling myself internally, I need to start bottling this. I need to start capturing this in video. And we have started to do that. So we can show our customers, like, listen, there are real people behind this company, and there's a real person who really is leading from the front. He's not a boss, he's a true leader where he gives us a lot of autonomy and a long leash. And he just, he's like, hey, if you're screwing up, raise the flag fast.
And this is such a good way that you're describing this, because I think one thing that if I could do more of, and that we could master at Brandcraft, our agency, and then allowing this process that we're trying to build to allow people to build their brand, is to say, try and get, especially with successful founders that have built a successful team like he has with you guys, is trying to get him, like you just said, in front of as many employees as you can, because at some point he can't be in front of everybody.
No.
Like he just can't. He doesn't have enough time. I'm sure he tried for a long time to know everybody and to be in front of everybody.
Yeah.
At some point you can't. And when you can't, I think it's important for the team, whatever that means, the executive team, let's say, to say we need to get what makes him and what makes him or her in any other organization, but what makes that person. They are actually the DNA of this company. They founded it, they started it, it's built in us, but we need to get them out in front of more. So I think, that's not something I think we have mastered necessarily in our process. We try and get words out and then deliver those words to people.
Right.
But I think you might have even said, maybe you didn't mean video, but when you said that, I was thinking, yeah, there needs to be videos where you hear the founder talking, or you see, and maybe that's a part of onboarding or training or something like that. But I think the founder can often have a lot of that within them that you don't know, that I think people should know.
I think it makes it relatable too, especially to prospects. Like when we were in Denver a couple of weeks ago for a conference, and I went and bought, my previous agency life, I've done my share of video production and editing. And so I was like, listen, I can't afford to grab some really good cameras, but iPhone's not bad. We just need a lapel mic and some lights, and we'll go record the CEO. And we did. I think it actually turned out great. He wasn't a big fan.
Okay.
But he believes in it. And so he's actually going to be flying me down to Houston so we can actually get some real equipment and a team and do several of these. And one of them was him talking about EHS Insight and why he did it, why they did it, why he believes in it. Another one is, and I picked this up from Matt Hammer, who's the CEO of Vivid Learning Systems, a welcome message to new customers as they're onboarding and they're getting emails like, here's the CEO of the company. And like, it is done very sincerely. Like, we value our customers because they're literally what keep the lights on and what put, money in employees' pockets and allow the company to grow. But those are some of the projects that we're doing because I just want to bottle, his essence up and be able to sprinkle around.
It's crazy too how many times that these aren't hard things to do, right? If somebody's getting onboarded, you're like, well, just send them the email with the link to the video, or even I can't remember the product that we use. Oh, Loom. Loom's a great way to record something and send. But anyway, it's not that difficult, and it can be very meaningful.
Yes.
To just put that in front of someone and say, hey, first thing, just watch this video, or even watch it in between the time you've been hired, but before you come in for the first time, you can watch some of this content. I think it's always, it's an interesting idea.
And tying it back to brand, Torey, like, this is part of brand. Like, we're setting the tone in the communication from the CEO's mouth. Like, I help write the script. He gives it his once over to make sure it's his voice. But ultimately, like, we want to set the tone that, this is how we interact with our customers. And this is what we want to project, that we're not, because we have some big competitors in our space. And so, how do we project that we can handle the workload you need that these other enterprise level companies can? except we're not big, and we're actually, if you were to call up the VP of customer success, he would actually pick up the phone and talk to you and work through things. Now, it's not going to be like that forever, especially if we want to scale up, but that's the essence that we want to maintain moving forward, that we're a homegrown company in the great state of Texas, that, to something that's going to be, worldwide.
Yeah, I think that, that founding vision of like, there's probably things that were very important to him, and you might have just reiterated a lot of those, like customer service, the way we interact, the way that you feel. Feelings, of course, I always think are part of the brand process. A very important part is how do you want to make a customer feel when they interact with you? And in our process, we try and say, hey, well, let's not talk about feelings in the initial part. Let's talk about position, where your product is going to be fit. What are the technical reasons it's going to be better? And then try and marry that with what are the emotions of the customer and how do we tie these two together?
Right.
Which I think is an interesting way to do it. Because sometimes it's way more fun, by the way, to go to the emotional marketing side and solve those problems immediately of, I already know what we're going to say to the customer. I already know what we're going to say. And I don't know, in our agency, that's the part I think we really like, is when we get down to some of that messaging, you're like, man, that's great. I can't wait to use that.
That's the creative part.
That's the creative part.
Yeah. And I think you're getting to like the more the technical side, like diving into the ICP and really figuring out that market fit and like who you're going to talk to. And
well, you told me that you're a movie guy, and I look at that process, right? So in a movie, someone dreams up an idea, or maybe they've already written a script, or there's a story out there, whatever, that someone dreams up an idea. And then I don't know the process. You probably know it way better than me. But at some point, somebody picks it up and says, yeah, we think we're going to make that movie. And then all this stuff, technical stuff happens, right?
Right.
Everyone's saying, we need money. We need to know. And then they go out, we need actors. We need whatever it is. I happen to, you got to help me. This is how bad I am with movies. But Kill Bill, who's the maker of?
Tarantino.
So Tarantino. I saw him at Adobe Max. He was the keynote speaker at Adobe Max.
Very cool.
Where he described like his process. And I don't know all of it, and I'm gonna get it wrong, and people are probably gonna comment that you're getting it wrong. But ultimately, this is one thing he said, that he will actually start with a soundtrack and work backwards from a soundtrack and start building this stuff out. When he said I start with a soundtrack and I work backwards, my mind was blown when he was explaining that. I was like, this makes no sense. But yet, when people that are really into movies would tell me, or I guess one movie that I'm into of his, because I haven't watched them all, was one of the first, I think, but it was Pulp Fiction.
Mm-hmm.
And Pulp Fiction, to me, the soundtrack did make that. Like,
big
you're
time.
Like, it was so brilliantly done.
I mean, Reservoir Dogs,
See, that was before.
That was before, yeah. But, and it's actually funny, too, because I could get where he's going from, where he's trying to pick the music. Because music, you could watch any other movie. And if it's got a bad soundtrack or a bad song that just doesn't fit, like just something seems off. But when it's like everything's gelling together, you're saying to yourself, "Oh man, like we're creating some magic." And so I could see he's trying to put the round peg in the square hole.
A bit. He's actually doing the opposite of what I was about to say. He's saying, "No, let's start with the creative, and then we'll work the technical side through and figure out how to tell this story."
Right.
And I'm certain he has the story in his head, probably the main points of it, but is still building that through a soundtrack of what that's going to look like I thought it was fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard other creatives too say that, where like maybe as they're planning thing. I mean, this is also in relevance to brand too, but like as they're developing everything too, they maybe got some things floating in their head, like, okay, how would we be able to fit this in organically and naturally, so it doesn't feel forced, but still get to use this type of creative, or that type of creative.
Yeah. So originally I brought that up because I was like, well, the technical side is always, what we try and tackle. We try and get a client to tackle the technical side to give us a base to work from.
Right.
Because we have to learn so much. When we go through a brand process, we have to learn so much. So we go into, we didn't do the work for EHS, but let's just imagine that we did. We come in, we have to learn really a lot about the company.
Yeah.
Why did it found? Where are you at? What, maybe there were some pivots along the way. I don't know your guys' story, but we have to learn so much of it. And a lot of it's very technical. A lot of it is learning. I don't even know this industry very well. Mm-hmm. We do a lot of work in B2B and in the digital marketing and in the brand space. But in digital marketing, even when we're not working on brand, you have to learn so much about the product just to make intelligent decisions about ads or about copy and concept. It can be very daunting and difficult, but there's rewards in it as well?
I mean, in your defense, I've been there now 10 months in seat, and I still don't know. We've got fantastic customer education team that we our knowledge base is crazy. It's very in depth and exhaustive, and it walks everybody through everything. I'm still touching. I can only see just brushing the tip of the iceberg on how deep this platform goes and how sophisticated it is. And so it's nice. Like as I'm unpacking this, I'm also like, oh, we should be marketing it this way, and we should be doing it this way, and how does this fit? Or be like, oh man, we're not saying that right. Like that's not actually conveying the value of actually how powerful this particular module of the platform is.
Yeah.
And so the technical side, it's funny. I actually thrive on the technical side, and that's why I've got such good creatives on my team. I like the numbers, and I like to read the numbers and kind of swim the waters that way. And so I'm always like attacking the technical first, but most people don't want to do that, or they haven't been trained properly, or don't have the experiences to do it. And that's why they should hire you guys.
Your path went from agency life, basically agency world, to then working in-house for a company, and I'm missing a few there, but working in-house for a company similar to the industry that you're in right now. You did that again, took a step up higher, in this company. Would Chris ever go back to agency world and agency life? Tell me about what you love about what you've worked yourself into, which is, right now the VP of marketing for EHS. But what do you love about it? What do you miss maybe about agency world? What do you get out of this? And what's in the future for you?
I think it's actually what I've tried to nurture in the environment within the team that I'm leading is things are changing all the time. You're working with clients who their needs and desires are always changing, and you're also learning about something different all the time. How I can say why I'm happy with where I'm at is we're constantly evolving the product, and everything's changing. I also, we talked about this at lunch. If it's not broken, I break it, and I try to make it better. But I think from an agency side, I also get really, like whenever I start a new role, my wife and my family don't see me for a while because I just go into our bedroom and I just read and I absorb, and it's just one of my top 5 skills. I just want to know everything. And so that would be one thing too that I, would probably enjoy most going back there is just learning so much.
This is a skill set. Yeah. That's a skill set I think that could benefit a lot of marketers. In the brand side, it's a skill that you absolutely have to have. You have to be curious about the things around you.
Yeah.
And when someone's telling you their story and saying, this is why I founded this company and this is what we do, and you have to be curious about all the things you don't want to be curious about.
Yep.
Like, yeah, we this is the software we create and we do it for this client, and it's B2B, and you might say, that's kind of boring, but then you dive into it and you're like, hey, this is really interesting, actually. Like, why did this come about? You told me, well, kind of, when OSHA was founded, there was this need to have regulatory compliance. So you didn't say that. I guess I'm saying that, but that's true, this is how the product lived. I think in general, the best marketers I know, and those that have the passion for it, have this level of curiosity that they want to know about everything around them. And I think that's almost the only way you sell what's around you. Because I think you have to sell everything in marketing. You have to sell yourself. You have to sell a product. You have to sell. So every day that you're in an office, you're selling to somebody your ideas, your thoughts, why we should do this, why we should do that.
Yep.
But I'm so glad you brought that up. Curiosity makes such a big difference in all of that.
Ted Lasso, that's actually one of I tell everybody on my team, like, you have to watch Ted Lasso. 50% are failing. You know who you are. But his philosophy is always be curious. And we've tried to teach that to our sons. My wife and I are always curious. Like, it goes down to not only like different products, but also different religious beliefs, political beliefs, anything and everything. And if you have that desire to be curious, you're always going to be like, well, tell me more. Tell me more.
I have not seen Ted Lasso. And also, one of the best references that I know of are from Ted Lasso, which is the goldfish.
Be a goldfish.
Be a goldfish.
I tell my team that all the time. Be a goldfish.
And I've heard it referenced in different ways. I used to tell my son when he was little to act like a bass, because bass fishing, they forget that they bit your lure like 5 minutes ago.
That's funny.
But the goldfish one's much better.
Yeah.
And it travels much better than the bass theory that no one really knows about. But yeah, the idea that take your lumps and just let them go. Forget about them.
It's the same thing I tell my team, like, everybody makes mistakes. I make mistakes every day. Everyone makes mistakes. And I tell my team, I go, the word failure and mistake is not in the vernacular of our department. It's always learning lessons. Like, just don't do it again. Like, okay, well, we knew that was wrong. Let's not do it again.
Major brands in marketing often make mistakes.
Yeah.
Like their marketing or their agency will come in and they will say something out in the market, in this broad market. And do you ever think, I always think this, imagine the size of the team that did that made that decision to put that out in front of everybody. And you didn't recognize, there's so many problems I've seen in the last 10 years, but anywhere from something that appears to be slightly racist, that appears to be not on brand or whatever it might be. And they get a bunch of flack for it, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, if that big team and that big agency can make that make that mistake, I'm going to give myself a little bit of grace that we're not going to always nail it, that we're not going to always, of course you should always try. You should never make mistakes that you should obviously couldn't have done, but you're going to.
It goes down to, there's a book I recently read. I think it might have been like the 80-20 rule, or no, that's a different book. But essentially, don't let perfect get in the way of progress. Mm-hmm. Get it to 80% and then go. And my level of good is not, I think of myself as a pretty humble guy, but my level of good is typically higher than most people's perfect. So I tell my team, I'm like, it's good to launch.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I'm not done. I'm like, are you done or are you done?
Yeah.
Like, do you need to keep going? Like, we can always refine it if it's living on the website at a later time, but let's just get it out there.
Yeah.
Like, because how the psychology is it's so easy to get something to 80%. It's really hard to get it from 80 to 90%. And it's even harder to get it from 90 to 100%. And I think you probably know that working with clients, and when you're designing a brand or something, like you can get a majority of the work done, but then it's that fine tuning getting across the finish line.
There is that problem.
Yeah.
That problem I learned most in software development, because we had a software side of our company at early stages.
Right.
Is that, let's say you did have $1 million budget that gets you 90%. You need another 5 million to get the next 10%.
Yep.
Like, you just can't get it that easily. Like,
Yeah.
that's the big problems come in at that 10% level. So I learned it there. Yeah, it's a very interesting problem. Chris, one thing that you've done so far, you've gotten through this whole interview, you have not used a curse word, which you asked me if that was okay. And I said, yeah, just whatever. So we didn't go there.
I know.
But I was thinking today as I was driving over to talk to you,
Okay.
that I'm not a big music guy. I'm not a big movie guy. I'm like, man, Torey, you're just boring. And I was like, well, wait, what did I listen to back in the day? Like when I had music on all the time. And I had to go all the way back to like my high school days.
ABBA? Was it ABBA?
It wasn't ABBA.
Oh, okay. There's nothing wrong with ABBA, by the way.
No. And I was thinking, and then I remember that you asked if language was okay. Like, what would that language? And I was like, yeah, it's fine. And I was thinking, one of my favorite songs was a song called Cuss Words. Have you ever heard that?
No.
It's by a rapper called Too Short.
Oh, I know Too Short.
Well, Too Short had a song called Cuss Words. But the only point of the song was that I'm just going to say cuss words over and over again. Nonstop. And it went something like cuss words, let them roll. And then, we'd go into the song. But so, yeah, that was what I was thinking as I was driving to go meet you today was, oh, yeah, like back in the day. So it was gangster rap back in like my time with late 80s, early 90s, Too Short, NWA, all that was all we listened to.
I was listening to, as I was pulling into the parking lot, I was listening to Ice Cube's Rap Music Made Me Do It.
Yeah.
So
that was when back in the day. I still listen to some of that. Listen to a lot of country. Take it or leave that. But I was out of country for a long time, and now I'm back again. So, and I'm getting the bug.
No country. We did see Foo Fighters for the sixth time.
You told me that you went to Portland.
Yeah, on Friday, and this will be my swearing drop. But bought a koozie. They always sell koozies, and I like to have the Foo Fighters koozies. And for anybody who's seen Foo Fighters, they play for 3 hours straight. And it said it's gonna be a long fucking night right there in the koozie. And as always, they always deliver.
I didn't know that about the Foo Fighters.
Yeah, they play for 3 hours every time. Dave Grohl's 55, and he runs around like a 19-year-old when he first got started with Nirvana.
Seems like a cool guy. Like every time I see him, like his interviews are great. He cares. He seems like he cares a lot about not only what he does, but just about people. So he seems like a good guy.
I highly recommend his autobiography, actually.
Interesting.
In fact, if I'm in a creative slump or I need some inspiration, I'll listen to it. I think I've done it about 5 or 6 times.
Cool.
Good life lesson. Good life lessons.
Chris, I appreciate it.
Thanks,
good conversation. I bet we'll have you on again. But this was a great way to get the House of Brand, one of our first podcasts, out. So I appreciate it.
I'm honored.
And thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you.